Hey everyone, real quick before we start the video, Danielle and I have launched a new channel. It is live right now. This channel is going to be sort of vlog, IRL, lifestyle focused, not really a whole lot of video games going to be on the channel. Our first video is up right now. A second video with, well, with this guy over here is going live on Friday. Yeah, bud. Yeah, if you want to see more Brim, trust you'll want to hop over to this channel. And we're gonna have videos about every 2 weeks on Fridays. If you've enjoyed, excuse me, the shenanigans with me and Danielle on my channel recently with some of the outtakes and stuff like that, then I think you're gonna like this channel. I think you're gonna enjoy it. So, videos in the description. Check it out. Thanks very much. Finally got to play the Outriders demo recently for a sponsored stream. This video is not sponsored, just to make that clear. The stream was. This is not. Figured people are going to want my takes on Outriders due to the parallels that I imagine some people are making with another game that I'm quite familiar with. So let's talk some Outriders. This is going to be from a PC player perspective. I haven't been hearing as many nice things about the game from a console point of view. I think that's mainly due to controls, but I haven't played on console just yet, so I don't have that much to say about the game on console at the moment. Also, I am going to be talking about some stuff that isn't in the demo, so I guess this is going to be a first impressions of Outriders and the Outriders demo. The plot of Outriders is basically this. Earth got completely messed up to the point where humanity needs to leave. You're a part of what is essentially a scouting team, and you land on the planet Enoch, which basically looks like Earth 2.0, to make sure that it's safe for the hundreds of thousands of citizens who came along for the ride. I think they said 500,000. You get there, you start setting up a base camp, and a weird signal is discovered. You go to that signal, but then a big storm comes, and it just starts destroying almost everyone in sight, except for you, of course. You survive a strike from the storm. You're injured, so you're thrown into cryostasis until a doctor can get to you so that you don't die, except nobody gets to you, and then you're freed 30 years later. Enoch is now a bandit hellscape, and you're just trying to figure out what's going on. That's the start of the game. That's kind of the premise. People have been kind of turned off by a lot of the game's dialogue. I think the voice acting isn't too bad. I get the vibe that they're going for with the whole gritty, maybe not edgy, a couple edgy things here and there, but very gritty, serious tone. It doesn't bother me too much. There's a bunch of swearing in there too and whatnot. I don't know. I'm just not really someone who gets that annoyed with a game for that kind of stuff, but that's probably because I'm ultimately much more interested in the gameplay portion of the game, and I can kind of overlook those things. I'm also not a great critic of dialogue, so take that for what you will. Tone can seem a little inconsistent at times as well in terms of dialogue. No excitement when there should be. Swapping from comedic tone back to serious, back to comedic, back to serious. Again, not a good critic when it comes to dialogue and tone, but I know others have spoken about this being a negative for them. There's a lot of camera shake on the cutscenes. People are not about it at all. It's a little disorienting for me personally. I do wonder if the devs are capable of making any adjustments to this in a timely fashion, though. The game comes out in less than a month. Not really sure how the camera in video game animation works, but I imagine redoing all of it so that the camera isn't shaking might be a bit of work. They might do something where the camera isn't shaking as much. I don't know. Environment-wise, the demo is very brown. A lot of brown, orange, beige tones. Not the most thrilling of aesthetics, but I am going to give the game a little bit more of a chance upon the actual release and try not to judge the entire aesthetic of the game based on the starting zone. They've shown many different landscapes in trailers and marketing. I'm assuming we'll go to all of them at some point, but it does seem like it's going to hit all of your typical RPG landscapes. Your jungle, your forest, your desert, your snow, your industrial, your mountains, etc., etc. For the Destiny folk, Destiny is probably hitting that fantasy itch a little bit more than Outriders will, but the marketing material didn't look too bad. For me personally, I'm much more interested in the gameplay portions of the game, given its very heavy RPG nature, whereas in stuff like God of War, or maybe Horizon Zero Dawn, I value the environment and aesthetic a little bit more. Yes, it's possible to have good aesthetic and good RPG elements at the same time, but aesthetic takes a back seat for me, maybe compared to other people who might value it a lot more. I'm not playing Outriders to admire the scenery, I'm playing Outriders to crank the world tier up to 15 and seeing what happens. So let's talk gameplay. You got 4 classes: Devastator, Trickster, Pyromancer, Technomancer. They each come with their own class trees, where you can choose to spec how you want to play your character. For example, Pyromancer can be spec'd to focus on your guns, being more tanky, or focus on your ability usage. You can weave into multiple trees if you so choose, and it seems like resetting your points to try something else is nothing more than the click of a button. You will also be unlocking skills as you level your character. You get to have 3 skills on your hotbar at the most, but these can also be swapped pretty freely. Seems like the game very much wants you to be able to swap almost anything at any time, including your character's customization options, with almost no limitations. I wasn't the most enthralled with the skill trees overall, though. Most of the nodes are very simple things like increasing health, or weapon damage, or ability damage, and very few of the more marquee nodes are anything more than doing a thing makes another thing happen for a few seconds. The final nodes in the pyro trees, for example, are activating immobilize skills increases weapon damage by 60% for 10 seconds. Activating ignite skills increases armor piercing and resist piercing by 45% for 10 seconds. And increase explosion skill base damage by 30%. Sure, they're good. All of the things are good, but they're just not the most interesting. Most of the things that affect or alter your abilities more directly, the more interesting things, are on armor drops specifically. For example, killing someone with an explosion from an ability leaves some fire on the ground, increasing health drain efficiency, stacking resistance buffs, etc., etc. We'll briefly talk RPG expectations in a little bit. I really enjoy the fact that your abilities are a massive portion of the gameplay experience. They're such a big part because their cooldowns are really short, talking like 15 to 20 seconds at the most. Not only that, but they're a core component of the game. They don't feel supplementary to your guns. They can feel like the most powerful part of your kit. You can spam them off cooldown on easier difficulties, but as things get more difficult, you'll definitely want to use them a bit more methodically. I would still say you'll be using your gun more often than your abilities, but the ratio is so much closer to 50-50 than other games of this kind, Destiny, Division, Anthem, etc. Just get in the habit of making sure you're casting your abilities as often as possible, assuming you're actually going to be using them effectively. It took me a little bit to get used to the fact that I could actually use them so often. The game also features an interrupt system for certain bosses where you can interrupt spell casts of enemies by using interrupt marked abilities on them. But bosses get immunity periods where they can't be interrupted, so you can't just spam it over and over. I was very pleasantly surprised at the fact that I had to run away from giant lightning storms if I didn't interrupt during a boss fight. You can't jump. There's no jumping in this game. If you're someone who cares about that, I figured that's probably pretty important to know. There's no flying around or anything, as far as I know. There doesn't appear to be much verticality to this game besides some ramps. Hell, there are some small ledges that you won't be able to climb down from either, leaving you pinned in a corner, perhaps unknowingly, which is a bit of a bummer. The gunplay is serviceable. I don't find the experience to be remarkable in any way. I'm not a big third-person shooter kind of guy in the first place, and if you're hoping for Destiny-level shooting mechanics and feel, you shouldn't. It's functional. It works. That's all I really have to say on it. I'm pretty neutral on it. The game is not really an open world. There are some very specific paths that you will have access to in certain territories, which will lead you to objectives and some side quests tucked away in other non-main story areas. This doesn't bother me a whole lot, but I mention it just to set expectations. You're not going to be sprawling out into this massive zone to explore different areas. It's pretty predetermined. The demo's level area wasn't super big or anything like that, but without seeing the rest of the game, it's tough to say whether or not all story areas will be this size, bigger, smaller, I don't know. There are also a lot of loading screens. What feel like a lot, anyway. There were frequently times where I went to start a side quest, entered a cutscene where all I do is jump across a gap or open a door, and then went back to the game. Hey, quick update for this section. The developers have come out with a post outlining why there are so many cutscenes and fade outs and fade ins. A lot of it has to do with matchmaking and making sure people know where they are in the game. Just check the description for the article if you want to read more. Now, I'm not an engineer. I'm sure those load screens need to happen because they have to load certain areas of the map that you wouldn't otherwise enter, but it would be nice to not have these big fade out, fade in load screens what feel like a lot of the time. Once you're in a mission or a certain kind of side quest zone or something, most of the time you're good to go, but some side quest areas are pretty small, at least in the demo, leading to even more loading screens. This game has world tiers where you can crank up or down the difficulty of the game. Higher difficulty equals better and more rewards. It seems like the game tries to get you to an equilibrium with world tier where the better you do, the higher the game starts to scale up. You can have the game automatically just set you to the highest tier available, or you can pick your own. You can also repeat missions on higher world tiers. This game has an incredibly heavy RPG style focus and system. Build crafting, hunting for armor and guns to match your skills, synergizing all of those things to maximize your build regardless of what it is. This is the core of the gearing and loot experience. Armor has perks that give your character abilities certain bonuses. Weapons have perks that affect your weapon and or bullets. At the start of the game, obviously you're not going to have a whole lot going on, but later on things will ramp up. There is a great video on the Outriders YouTube channel that goes over post-campaign content. Crafting and modding is a large portion of the game, and that video goes over it. It was very intriguing to me. I highly suggest giving it a watch, as it is what has been selling me on the game thus far. It seems somewhat polished in that regard, although marketing material can make anything look polished. But given how transparent they're being, it is giving me a level of comfort I don't feel like I normally have with other games of this type. Post-campaign gameplay content will consist of an activity called expeditions, which are new areas, not stuff from the main story, so they claim, that will open up after the story ends. I really appreciate this level of transparency before a game launch. Feels like we don't get this very often. The cover system in this game feels like it needs a bit of help. It is easily one of the weak points of the gameplay experience at the moment, but unfortunately feels crucial to success considering how ubiquitous the cover mechanic seems to be in the game. For example, it feels like a struggle to try to get into cover when you are directly next to a cover type wall. You need to back up or wait for the game to register that you're trying to enter cover, and then you can get into cover. Not to mention that enemies will be tossing many grenades at you, forcing you out of cover quite often, most of the time into a hail of bullets. For a game that can ramp up its difficulty pretty high and can take you from full to very low health in an instant, getting into and out of cover needs to be a more fluid process, especially because of how often you feel like you have to do it. However, the abilities in the game have relatively short cooldowns, and that feels like it clashes with being in cover sometimes. The game plays a lot better when you're able to navigate around a battlefield, but things will end up hurting really bad that you will need to pop into cover, at least at higher levels. When you have to stay in cover because a sniper is going to pop you with a shot the moment you come out, and I truly mean the moment you come out, but there's also a grenade ready to explode at your feet, and an enemy walking around a corner, just doesn't really feel that great to be pinned behind cover. I'm not saying that things should be easy on higher difficulty, but, you know, hopefully you get what I mean. I wouldn't consider this game a cover shooter either, and even some marketing material says, quote, "Cover is for cowards." So I'm not really sure how they plan on addressing cover and the cover mechanic in this game. It seems like it's really important, and yet also not important. I don't know. This is not a live service game. This is not a games as a service game. The game will come out, and it seems like that'll be it. I don't know if the devs plan on making expansions or this or that or whatever, but at the moment, the game will launch, and that's that. I could absolutely see them making more stuff if the game does well, if it's making money, if it's reviewed well, but I could also just see them moving on. I have enjoyed what I've played thus far. My views are on the slightly favorable side at the moment. Does it have the insane polish of a AAA game? No. But as long as the game will scratch the RPG itch that I have, I'm okay with that. I personally don't really care as much if the writing is not perfect, if I'm not in crazy fantasy environments. I don't value these things. I don't know how to critique them as a result either. What I value is gameplay. That's why I'm here. If you can sell me on gameplay, I am willing to give it a try. I initially wrote off Outriders a while ago in my mind because I was just really burned out with looter shooters. We've had so many come out. It's all I play. It's all I do. And I just did not want to dive into yet another one, especially with how bad I got burned by investing into another game. But after playing the demo, after doing more research, I will be willing to give the game a shot at the very least. If you're trying to make comparisons to other games, if you're expecting this to play like any other game, Destiny, just stop right now. The game does not play like Destiny. It doesn't play like The Division. It doesn't play like Borderlands. If anything, it feels like it's modeled after Diablo, but obviously Diablo and this are very different gameplay experiences. I don't know how much YouTube content I'll end up making on Outriders. Don't know to what degree I'll get involved, but I'm sure we'll get in a good amount of stream time with it. The prospect of it not being a games as a service game is also appealing with my usually stacked life schedule. Interested to hear your guys' opinions as well about the game. Let me know in the comments how you're feeling about Outriders. I feel like things have been kind of mixed. The demo's free if you want to check it out for yourself. If you want to do that. But that's what I got for you on my first impressions of Outriders. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.